My name's Darrin Caddes. I was lucky enough to be a NEXTies recipient a couple of years ago, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. For those of you that know Martijn Stiphout, you might think of him differently depending on your perspective of the world and who you are. If you're a surfer, you probably think of him as a shaper. If you are someone who cares about the world that we live in and the world that we're going to leave our children, you probably think of him as an environmentalist. If you are a builder, you probably think of him as a craftsman. If you're an art lover, you think of him as a sculptor, as an artist. If you're a woman, you probably think of him as gorgeous. I've got a little bit of all of this in me, I got to admit. I'm a designer. I'm an industrial designer, which means I have a profound appreciation for objects and the role they have in our lives. And Martijn is all of these things and more. To say that I'm a fan of his work would be a gross understatement. I can't surf anymore, but I have 3 of his boards. So if that says anything, let it speak for itself. But Martijn is someone who collects things that are discarded, really, in this world, takes old decks and fences and turns them into beautiful, functional pieces of art that we can just lust after. And I'm a great fan. I'm very proud to introduce him and congratulate him on this year's NEXTies Award. So, Martijn, come on up here and get some love.
All right, well, thanks, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. Thank you, of course, to the Rio and the Matthew for putting all this together. That introduction by Darrin, that's pretty amazing. I'm really honored for that. What? Okay, anyways, we'll continue. So as Darrin said, I do like to pick up trash. I like to collect things, and I like to turn them into other things. Generally, it turns out to be surfboards. And I've kind of figured out that it's not just the picking up the trash and collecting it and repurposing it into a surfboard is what really gets people interested. What gets people interested is the story that's behind it. And the same thing goes for these awards. So this is actually the first award that I've ever received in my life. Thank you. The interesting thing about it is I had to make it myself. So, I'm sure there's not too many Oscar nominees that get to say that, but I do. So really, building these boards and taking trash, turning them into surfboards, it's about making connections, about telling stories. And my business partner, David Dennis, is the best at telling stories, so hopefully I do you justice, David. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the award, and that's pretty much going to sum up everything that I tried to do in my surfboards and my other art pieces as well. So they're pretty neat, nothing too flashy, nothing crazy. But I'll start with the building block of the whole thing, which is the back of the award here. I'm going to see if I can make part of this relate to every one of you out here. So here being in Santa Cruz, we've probably all gone to the boardwalk and we've all ridden the Giant Dipper. This back piece is actually a support piece from the Giant Dipper. It was given to us by the Santa Cruz Seaside Company. Wasn't quite sure what to do with it, and then once I got the job of building these awards, it was kind of a shoo-in that this had to be used. So it's pretty neat. It's such an iconic piece of the Santa Cruz history here. If we look at the front, the main attention getter is really the X in the middle for the NEXTies. It's beautiful black wood, it's ebony, and it comes from one of the local companies that's really one of my biggest inspirations. You all might be connected in that if you listen to a lot of music. These pieces are ebony offcuts from the Santa Cruz Guitar Company. They're a local company. They've been around for 39 years this year. Richard Hoover, the gentleman that runs this, has absolutely become a friend, and it's amazing. And we've secured an arrangement with him that we actually get all of their offcuts and all of their waste that they don't have anything else to do with. Small pieces of ebony I can make good use of. So that's where the center part comes in. Now, if we're talking about an event like this, what really keeps it all together is the alcohol. And that's the same thing for the awards. The brackets around the edge here, around the X, is from French white oak, which some of you may know is used for wine barrel making. It's also stained kind of purple, and that's from red wine. This was an oak barrel that was donated to us by SoCal Vineyards by Peter Bargetto, which is just absolutely amazing wood, and it's a joy to work with. So that composes, the outside brackets of it. The whole thing really is based on this building block on the bottom, which is a really special piece of wood, especially to a lot of people in Santa Cruz. It was a support piece for a piano. It actually held the soundboard into a piano that was built in the 1940s, and was owned by a gentleman named Art Honig. Art was a student, a traveler, a surfer, a businessman, a husband, a father, all of the above. He grew up in Waikiki. He was actually friends with a gentleman named Tom Blake, who is responsible for creating the design or the manufacturing process of the hollow wooden boards that I build. So he apparently bought the piano in the 40s, and every day he'd come home from work, he'd play a little bit of his piano. And Tom and Mike, his two sons, Tom was actually an editor of the Santa Cruz Sentinel in the past. They read a story about Ventana surfboards and supplies and about what I was doing with reclaimed wood, so he contacted us and said, "Hey, I've got this piano. It's very dear to me. It belonged to my father who's passed on. It'd be amazing if you could turn it into something that goes surfing or use it in any way, shape, or form." It was an untunable piano, so rather than just throwing it in the dump, he wanted another purpose for it. And that's how we ended up with it. So that's what this bottom piece is. It's a spruce block. That's also what these little pegs in the middle are. They're the little felt pieces and the brass rods that were used for the hammers to hit the strings in the piano. So also kind of neat. As I said, I try to use most everything that I come across, regardless if it's wood or not. The nameplates on the front here, I'll talk about in a second, but they're held on with these square-headed nails, and the nails also came out of those French oak wine barrels. So when I disassemble things, I really try to take everything I can and make use of in the future, hence the nails. Last but not least, our nameplates here are pieces of bandsaw blade. It's an old blade from my shop. It's too dull to use, and it was just kind of laying around collecting dust. And if nothing else here has created a connection to you between the award and you, then at least the bandsaw blade does, because without it, I wouldn't be here, and without the NEXTies, you guys wouldn't be here. So that being said, I'd like to sincerely thank you all for coming out, and I'm really looking forward to listening to our other speakers and see what the NEXTies hold in store for us. All right? Thank you, guys.